All right, so the time is now 12 o'clock noon. My name is Veronica Parker with AEBG TAP. Thank you all for joining today's webinar titled AEBG Nova Expense Reporting with Neil Kelly and Nicole Alexander of the AEBG office, as well as Ryan French of Product Ops. Before we get started, as you all know, please be sure to post any questions in the chat pod. Throughout the webinar, your questions will be addressed either by Neil, Nicole, or Ryan. So please be sure to post any questions that you have in the chat pod and they will be addressed throughout the PowerPoint presentation. We are recording this this webinar presentation, and it will be available via the AEBG site later on this afternoon. So if you have to leave for any reason or you need to go back to view the PowerPoint as well as the materials associated with today's presentation, you are able to do so via the website. So please be on the lookout for that. When you enter the room, if you're having any technical difficulties, please be sure to let me know by typing into the chat pod, and I will address your technical difficulties via a private chat. You will see a yellow highlighted tab at the end of the chat pod, so please be on the lookout for that if you are experiencing any technical difficulties. I do see that Russell is experiencing them right now, so I'll be sure to address him in just one moment. Some quick fixes is to just automatically exit out of Adobe Connect and come back in. Usually that fixes any technical difficulties you may be having. If that doesn't work, then we'll help you along the way. If you are hearing an echo in my voice as of right now, it may be because you are logged in more than once. So please log out of Adobe Connect and come back in and ensure that you're only logged in once. That should fix that issue. Also, we will be having screenshots throughout the PowerPoint presentation today. So if you are having a hard time seeing the screenshot, you can go to a full-size view. You can do so by pressing the four outward facing arrows up top next to the attendees pod. Once you select that, you will not have access to the chat, but if you would like to come back in, all you have to do is press the arrows that would now be facing inward, and that will give you access to a normal view as well as the chat pod. You can download today's presentation via the resource pod. And after the presentation, you will receive an evaluation appear on your screen. Please be sure to fill out this evaluation. It is our way of providing Neil, Nicole, and Ryan feedback regarding this webinar presentation, as well as addressing any technical difficulties you may have. Now I will turn it over to Neil Kelly, who will get us started. Neil?
Great. Thank you, Veronica, and welcome, everyone.
You're welcome.
So we have Nicole and Ryan along with myself today, and we're going to, for the next hour and a half, get you ready for expense reporting in Nova. So I have some good news and bad news on expense reporting. Would you like to hear the good news or the bad news first? I'll look in the chat. Whoever answers first. Okay, bad news. So the bad news is you still have to do your expense reporting. The good news is you're only doing year to date. So Nicole and Ryan will cover that a little bit later, but all you have to do is put in your year to date as of the third quarter. You don't have to go in and put in quarter one, quarter two, just the year to date. And so we'll go over that later. But I wanted to get that right out there so you guys have some good news, and we'll move right along. Okay, so the agenda today is we're going to talk about the reporting process, allocation amendments, budget change and expense reporting, target spending, planning, tips from Nicole on the questions she gets on a regular basis, and then open discussion. Majority of the time will be spent on budget change and expense reporting, and majority of the time will be spent with Nicole. And Jessica, they'll take care of you because I am talking as loud as I can. So I think there might be try not to be muffled. Try to get a little louder. Sorry. See if I can increase my.
Neil, just come into the mic a little bit more. Hold tight, everyone. We are fixing the sound now. Please, thank you. Hi, Neil. We are not hearing any sound from you right now, so can you please exit out of Adobe Connect and come back in? We apologize, everyone, for the inconvenience, but we will get this fixed right now. Okay, everyone, we are working on it. We will get Neil back on. In the interim, we will have Nicole come on. Neil is back.
Hi, everyone. This is Nicole. So it looks like most of you didn't hear anything that was presented. I know I didn't hear anything after we got through the agenda, so we'll have to
Okay,
we'll have to
Nicole, I can
start
do a
over.
redo.
Okay. Thanks, Neil.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are great.
Okay, I don't know why that happened. That hasn't happened before. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Let's take two. So here's the agenda. You kind of saw that. Most of the today will be spent on the expense reporting. So we'll just quickly go over the reporting calendar. You kind of saw this, but you didn't hear me say any of it. But at the beginning of the year, of course, the governor's budget is released. Then at the end of February, we release the preliminary allocations at the consortia level. Then for the next 2 months, you spend time with your members figuring out the CFAD allocations. May 2nd, you submit the CFAD allocations in NOVA. And then through May and June, California Department of Education and the Chancellor's Office work out the interagency agreement to disperse funds to individually to direct funded members as well as fiscal agents. Once the governor signs the budget on July 1st, then it goes to the Board of Governors for approval, like the third week of July. And then in August, schedules are sent to controllers, and that results in 11 installments out to local members or fiscal agents of consortia, and that's through August through June. And then in the middle of August, we have the annual plans due in NOVA, and that feeds into the work plans by each member and the work plan or the member budgets that are due at the end of September into NOVA. And then consortia approve those by the end of October, 30 days. And then with the quarter ending at the end of September, we start Q1 expense reporting by members that will be due December 1st. And then the consortia has 30 days to certify that. So to look at this a little more visually, when the quarter ends, you have 30 days to amend any allocations through your members, and Nicole will go over that allocation amendment process. And then within 60 days, you have the opportunity for members to revise their budgets. And also within 60 days after the quarter ends, the members can submit those expenditures, but budget revisions have to be done before expenditures are reported. Same thing, allocation amendments have to be done before budget changes. Budget changes have to be done before expenditures, kind of that hierarchy. And then after that 60-day period, we give the consortia 30 days to certify, and that would also include any of those changes above. And in fact, the allocation amendments would have to be certified before you went into budget changes or expense reporting. And then the quarter ends and you start this process all over again. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the cycle that we're going through on a quarterly basis as well as on the annual basis on the calendar. Just an update, all the CFADs were submitted. They're being reviewed. As soon as Nicole reviews all those CFADs, and if there's follow-up, if there's no follow-up, we have a letter pending with CDE and the Chancellor's Office. Once we get the okay on that, we will send that out to show you're approved, and that should be going out relatively soon. I think probably within the next week or two. Okay, let's talk about allocation amendments. So the allocation amendments are different than the CFAD process. So the CFADs that were just submitted, those are on a separate track, separate process, because if we ever next year, if you didn't submit your CFAD or you had an impasse, we would go back to the prior year CFAD. So the CFADs are submitted in a point in time. They are submitted by May 2nd, and they don't get changed at all. What can be changed is your allocations by your members through the allocation amendment process. And that can happen at any time during the year. You can do as many allocation amendments as you wish. And so those can be adjusted throughout the year based on member activities, carryover, regional need, any kind of things that your consortia decides they want to change. You can do that through allocation amendment process. And Nicole will show you screenshots. And for some of you, you've seen this before, but we want to just kind of go through this process and cycle since we have a lot of people on the line today, and we want to make sure that everybody is up to speed on these. So when you make these allocation amendments, these adjustments do not impact or change the CFAD because that's a one-time, once-a-year process, and we like to keep that separate from the amendment process. And also, the amendments do not affect the prior year allocations by the members. So if we did have to invoke that prior year clause, we'd go right to the CFAD, and that would be the document that we would use to look at what the allocation would be for this coming year if there was a CFAD submitted. Okay. So for direct funded consortia, you can still do an allocation amendment, but because we can't turn off the state controller's disbursement of funds, you will have to transfer money, write checks or whatever, and send them to the other members of the consortia. So a little more difficult, but not impossible, but it does require a few more steps. Okay, I'll pause there as we bring in Nicole. If anybody has any questions about the allocation amendment process, Nicole's going to show you screenshots in Nova, which are available right now if you went into Nova, but she'll just kind of walk you through the process. Pause there for a second as Nicole comes on, see if we have any questions. CFAD or allocation amendments, feel free to ask. And then Nicole, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Neil. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Okay, I'm going to mute my line, and I think we can hear you pretty well.
Okay, great. Let me know if you can't. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Alexander with the AEBG office. I just want to reiterate what Veronica mentioned at the start of the presentation is that we are showing screenshots. If you have difficulty viewing the screenshots, you can expand your screen by clicking on the 4 outward-facing arrows on the top right side of the screen. You will lose access to the chat pod, however, if you do that. Okay, so before we show the allocation amendments function, I want to go over some of the navigation changes that have been recently implemented. But once you log in and select AEBG under Funds, you'll be directed to the main consortia dashboard, and this is now labeled Consortia and Members. From here, you can scroll through the list to find your consortium, or you can use the filters at the top of the screen, and it's a smart filter, so if you start typing the name of your consortia and hit enter, it'll usually pop up what you're looking for. And you can also navigate directly to your consortium's member agency pages from this screen by clicking on the arrow located next to the name of your consortium. So in this screenshot, this is showing the links to Allen Hancock Consortia and their member agencies below it. And once you click on the link for your consortia, you'll be directed to the main consortium page. And this page is where you can update consortium level information, such as contacts and allocations, and where consortium level documents are housed. And the following several screenshots will show what this looks like. It's one long page, so I couldn't fit it all in one screenshot. So we'll just the next screenshots show what it looks like as you scroll through. As you continue to scroll through your consortium's main page, you'll see the document repository for the CFADs, annual plans, and any other supporting documents. You will notice that previously all of the documents were grouped together, and with this new update, documents are housed separately by type, and hopefully this will make them easier to locate. And we're still on the main consortia page here, and as you continue to scroll, you will find a list of the member agency pages and the allocation section. We're going to come back to the allocation section in a little bit as I show you how to complete your allocation amendments. So this screenshot shows the scroll through to the bottom of the main consortia page, and this is where the member budgets and work plans can be accessed. And this screenshot shows the member agency page, and this is where member level contacts can be updated and member work plans and budgets can be accessed. And we're gonna, this is the page you're gonna navigate to as you make your budget revisions. This is a landing page that you'll navigate to. Okay, so now we're back at the allocation section. This is the allocation section from the main consortia dashboard. So in order to change your consortium allocations, you'll navigate to this section and you will click on the link that says, click here to amend members' allocations. And once you click on that link, you'll be directed to this page, which will allow you to update your 17-18 allocations and then click Save. Once you click Save, the affected member budgets will automatically be open to complete budget revisions based on the changes. So we're going to go over how to complete a budget revision in NOVA in a minute, but first Neil has some information to share regarding expense reporting. And before we move on, let me see if there's any questions.
There was a question from Monica, Nicole, about member required to sign off or check off for the allocation amendment. Maybe you could just go over that approval process one more time.
Yes, that's a very good question. So we don't have the certification built in NOVA just yet, but we have developed a template for you to use. And as allocation amendments are created, I get an email notification to let me know if there's been any amendments, and I will follow up with those folks to send you the approval template. And what it does is the template basically lays out what changes have been made, and then it requests a signature from all of the members, and then you would just fill out that form and upload it to the supporting documents section. In the future, we will have this built in NOVA, and it'll be a similar process as we went through with the CFAD, where they can do an online certification. But for now, this is the process that we have to ensure that all members are aware and in agreement of the allocation amendment.
So Nicole Cheris asks, can we make changes to something from 1617? I would assume you'd use the same process, but I don't know if 1617, that would be in the carryover number, right, in NOVA?
Yes. So the approval process, we would still have to use the form, and the form does have the ability to indicate 16, 17 changes. But to make the changes to reflect in budgets, that would be part of the 16, 17 carryover amount. That's part of building your budget.
So because it's a little different, you might want to have us walk you through if you're planning an allocation amendment for 1617. We have had a few consortia realize that their balance that they carried over from the old MIS system from the July 2017 report was not accurate. So they had to go back in and change that report to allow for that audit trail to follow into NOVA. And so they did have to make an allocation amendment in both systems. So that requires technical expertise that Nicole has, and she can walk you through that process of updating both systems. And this is probably the only time we'll have to toggle between both systems, as once we liquidate everything for 1617, then once that happens, everything will be in NOVA and we'll be able to process everything in the NOVA system. Nicole, anything to add on that?
Nothing to add, just to agree. Yes, if you're making changes to 16, 17, or if you found that you need to go back to the old system to make corrections, please feel free to contact me directly, and I can help walk you through that.
All right. And Nicole, Tracy asked about a link. Did you mention a link? Oh, is that a link to the template, or what do you think the link is?
So I don't have a link to the allocation amendment approval template. I've been sending those out as needed. However, we will get that up on the website. So I'm not sure if, Tracy, are you referring to the link to in NOVA to make the allocation amendments? That's located in the allocation section from the main consortia page.
Okay. And then Susan asked, she's with the West Hills Consortium, but she doesn't have access to some of the tabs. Is that because of the access they've given her, or it could be she's maybe in a different screen?
It
What do you think?
might have something to do with your access level, but it also could be a browser issue. So I would suggest to try, if you do have the correct access level, I would suggest to try using, to log in using Chrome browser. If you're still having issues, please contact us and I can help work with you one-on-one.
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions. And I think Ryan's going to follow up maybe on one of those technical questions there. So Nicole, I'm going to cover really quickly the expense reporting and then turn it back to you to walk through the process, because I think this is what everybody's waiting for. Are you okay with that?
Yes, sounds good.
Okay. So here's expense reporting. It's not as exciting as the calendar graphic, but we're going to move forward anyway. So here's a chart, another visual. I'm big on visuals. So if you're looking at, and this would be, starting with next year, but you could still go down to third quarter to look at how this applies. And so you have the expenditure due dates. The members are at the beginning of the month, 60 days after the quarter ends. And then the consortia due date is 30 days after that, 90 days in total. And then it cycles back again for the quarter. And then we encourage that budget revisions are handled before the expenditures. We give a due date of the middle of the month prior to the expenditures, but you can approve those budgets and get those budget changes in right before your expenditures, right before that deadline. Just work with your consortia director lead on making that happen, because you really have, as you can tell, first quarter you really have until December 31st to get everything in, and for this third quarter you really have until June 30th to get everything in. but we want to give the consortia some lead time to approve that. So I would work with your consortia director. If June 1st is going to be a difficult deadline to meet, let them know that. You really have until June 30th to get everything in, but you don't want to eat into the consortia director's time. And so that's something you should probably dialogue about. And we're okay with that, whatever you work out at the consortia and member level, just that everything gets in by June 30th. And then we'll be able to help you along the way. All right, so I'm going to move off this visual and just there's a couple of things we wanted to remind you. So like I said at the beginning, for Q3 you only need to report year-to-date expenses. And then member expenses as well as budget changes are due by June 1st. Consortia will approve by June 30th. But like I said, you can work with your consortia towards that June 30th deadline. But then as you looked at that visual in the last slide, next year when we start with Q1, every quarter we're going to be doing this. So you won't have, you'll still be year to date, but it'll be Q1. That'll be up, all the expenditures for Q1. Then Q2 will be year to date. Q3 will be year to date. Q4 will be year to date. So hopefully that makes sense. And then the final slide on that before I turn it over to Nicole. We said members can make budget changes during the expense reporting process, but the budget changes have to be completed before the reporting expenses are entered. Only member representatives can submit expenditure reports and budget changes, not everyone. So you have to be that member representative. And then this is important. Member representatives must ensure and certify that reported expenses have been prepared according to state regulations, i.e. accounting principles. So there's a little caveat or disclaimer that you will sign off on that says, I submit these expenditures adhering to all state requirements and regulations related to accounting practices, those kind of things, similar to what we had in the old system. And so that's why if you're a program person, I would not be the one entering those expenditures unless you have the okay from your accounting office and you got these figures from your accounting office. So there is a liability there if you put these in and then the state audits you or your single audit and they're not correct. So you have to be careful of that. Make sure your accounting people are aware of this, are involved in the process. And I think, Nicole, expense reporting, does that open today or later on this afternoon? And I think that's my last slide. So I'll turn it over to you and you can answer that question as you come back on.
Okay, yes, so expense reporting will be live in the system today. And I think the goal was for today, so by the end of the day today, it should be available in the system. So these the screenshots regarding the expenditure reports are not there yet, but they will be soon, very soon. Okay, so the following screenshots will show how to complete a budget revision in NOVA. And from the member agency page, you'll scroll to the bottom of the page and click on the budget and work plan link, which is shown here. I just want to point out that before a budget revision can be completed, the consortium primary contact must first uncertify the budget. And once the budget has been uncertified, it will be open to make changes. And so this screenshot shows the member agency budget in certified status. To uncertify, the consortia primary contact would click on the uncertify button, which is located on the top right side of the screen. And so once the budget has been uncertified, it will appear as being in draft status, and that's what this screenshot shows here. On the top right side of the screen, you'll see the words draft. In order to revise the budget, the member representative should navigate to the member budget and work plan section and then click on budget located on the left blue navigation pane. I want to mention that member contacts should have the ability to enter and edit information. They just don't have the ability to submit. So if you have a member contact make these changes, they should be able to have access to do this. But in order to submit it, a member representative will need to submit it. And so this screenshot shows the budget section. This is where you'll update your budget by object code to reflect any changes. And in this example, the allocation was changed, and as a result, the budget needed to be revised to account for the reduction in funds.
Nicole, there's a quick question. Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. Can I ask you there's a quick question from JC is in Nova right now and could not make any budget changes. So what would be the reason why you couldn't make a budget change right now?
So if your budget is in certified status, you won't be able to make any changes. You'll need to work with your consortia primary contact and ask them to log into the system and uncertify the budget for you, which should then open it up for you to be able to make changes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that interruption.
Oh yeah, no problem. I'm not very good at checking the question box, so thank you, Neil.
Oh, wait, Crystal wants you to clarify, does the member representative submit the expenditures, or are you just referring to budget revisions?
So the member representative also submits the expenditures. So the member representative is the only user role that has the ability to submit reports or information. Member contacts have input and editing privileges. They do not have privileges to do any submissions.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so once you have revised your budget, the amount listed under remaining amount should be 0, and this indicates that your budget balances with the total amount of available funds. And once the budget revision has been completed, the consortia primary contact will need to recertify the budget. And I'm going to mention this when we go over expenditure reports, but the budget needs to be in certified status in order for expenditure reports to be submitted. Okay, so now we're going to go into expenditure reporting. So before we get started, I want to reiterate what Neil mentioned in that allocation amendments and budget revisions need to be completed prior to the submission of the expenditure report. We don't have any dates in NOVA that'll lock you out of those functions, but you'll want to make sure that you have allocation amendments completed and the budget revisions all the way completed before an expenditure report is completed and submitted. So you'll want to make sure you work closely with your consortia primary contact regarding those items. So to access the expenditure reports, once you log into NOVA, you select AEBG under Funds, and then click on Fiscal Reporting, which is located on the left blue navigation pane. This will bring you to the Fiscal Reporting dashboard, which is shown here. And from here, you can scroll through the list to find your consortium, or you can use the filter located at the top of the screen. You can also search for previously submitted reports by using the fiscal year and period filters, also located at the top of the screen. Before you start your report or you click into your consortium, you want to make sure that the quarter 3 is selected under the period filter at the top of the screen. I think right now the default is it'll automatically take you into quarter 4, so you'll want to make sure that you click on the drop-down window and select quarter 3. And for expenditure reports that are due on June 1st, you will only need to complete the 3rd quarter report as expenditure reporting is year-to-date, as Neil mentioned previously. And once you click on your consortium, it directs you to this page here, and this is where you will find all of your member agencies' quarterly reporting templates. And you'll also notice at the top of this page, a summary is displayed. This shows the submittal status of prior quarters, as well as the certification status of the current reporting period. So because we've auto-submitted quarter 1 and 2, you'll see green check marks next to all of the member names for quarter 1 and 2. At the very top right side of the screen, you'll see a card that shows that Q3 report status is currently uncertified because in this example, reports have not yet been submitted. And so we're still on the same page here. As you scroll down, you'll scroll through this page to find your member agency's expenditure reporting template or card. And I just want to reiterate or mention again that only the member contacts and member representatives will have the ability to enter and submit information for their agency. So everybody has view access to everything in Nova. If you're a Nova user, you have access, you can view anything. Your editing rights is based on what consortia and what member agency you're associated with. So for the Q3 report, you would enter your expenditure information under the Q3 tab under the column labeled year-to-date expenditure. So that's what's shown here. You'll want to make sure that you're clicked on the Q3 tab, and you'll enter your expenditures in the first column to the left. So I'm going to quickly review the other columns that are shown here. You'll notice the next column is a new feature. It's titled the year-to-date forecast column. It's a new concept that we're introducing for the fiscal year for 18-19. It's intended to serve as a planning tool. And for the 18-19 year, this will be part of the budget submission process. So we'll have more information to share in the coming weeks. And of course, we'll host a webinar to provide more detailed information as to how it'll work in relation to your targets. But for now, the forecast column has been pre-populated with the spending targets for the quarter, which for Q3 is 45%. The remaining columns show the percentage of expenditures in relation to the forecast and to the overall budget, as well as the remaining budget amount. If your expenditures fall below the spending targets, you'll be required to enter an explanation before the report can be submitted. And this box will only show if you do in fact fall below the expenditure target. So if you're above the expenditure target, the box to provide an explanation will not even appear. Upon the submission of the report, you'll need to check a box that states that I have complied with the academic expenditure clause. And this will be a link which will pull up a PDF document. And basically, you're certifying that this report has been prepared in accordance with the applicable state regulations, that information in the report is accurate and true to the best of your knowledge, and that any information is supported by documentation on file at the district or college. Also, you'll notice in the reporting template, there will be a field for you to provide a brief summary of activities in this quarter. In this screenshot, this box is labeled additional comments, but that will be changed to state summary of activities. This field is not required, so you'll want to work with your consortia lead to find out more information from them as to what their preference is as far as what information they want in that area. But Nova will allow you to submit.
Nicole, we just have one clarifying question. So Erica asked, can you expand on the statement that Q1 and Q2 have been auto-submitted? What does that mean?
Okay, so what that means is that because we're starting the reporting in Q3, we've auto-submitted, and because we're reporting expenditures to date, it's not necessary to complete a Q1 and Q2 report. We're going to jump right into Q3. In order to jump into the Q3 reporting, we did have to auto-submit Q1 and Q2 as 0 expenditures. The system is set up in a way in that you cannot submit, you have to submit the reports in order. So we had to kind of close out Q1 and Q2 for us to be able to jump into Q3.
So Q4 will be the same year to date, and then starting next year, they'll have to start with Q1 and proceed all through each quarter in the full year. This year, we're just starting at Q3, but next year, they'll be required to fill out all 4 quarters, but year to date, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So for this year, because we were still developing the system, you do not have to do quarter one and quarter two. But in
Nicole,
future years, you will.
Yeah. So the expense reporting part of Nova is going to be open later today. So if people go into Nova, they won't be able to access what you're showing us right now. Is that correct?
That is correct. So right now, you will not see any of the features for expenditure reporting just yet. That is currently being launched today. So by the end of today, it should be in the system. And Ryan,
so I
can
know
confirm, I believe we're still on target.
Monica from Mendocino, she's able to take a look at it. So maybe the programmers are kind of working hard to get that launched. So you might be able to take a sneak peek, I guess, right now. But maybe wait till after the webinar, right?
Yeah. Yes, I know they've been working furiously to get this launched into the system. So yes, Monica could definitely be there.
And then Ryan just said fiscal reporting was just deployed, meaning I'm sure a programmer pressed a button so people can look at it now in real time, I guess.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna move on to the next slide. Okay. So when the expenditure report is ready to be submitted, the member representative should click on the Submit Quarter 3 button, which is located on the located on the bottom right side of the screen in the reporting card. And again, to reiterate, the member representative is the only user role that can submit the expenditure reports. The member contact can enter and edit information, but only the member representative can submit. And once the member representative submits their report, the status will change to submitted, as you can see on the lower right side of the screen. And once the report is submitted, the submit button then changes to display unsubmit quarter 3 report. Member representatives can unsubmit and revise their report up until the time that the consortium primary contact certifies the expenditure reports. So as a member representative, you do have access to the submit button, which then turns into an unsubmit button for you to be able to toggle back and forth between that. But however, once the consortia primary contact certifies the expenditure reports, you will need to work with your consortia lead to uncertify the reports if you need to make any changes after that fact. And we'll go over how the consortia lead can certify and uncertify in the following slides. Okay, so once all of the member reports are submitted, the consortia primary contact will be able to certify by clicking on the Certify Quarter 3 Report button, which is located at the top right side of the screen, which is shown in this screenshot. And also I want to point out that the NOVA system will not allow the reports to be certified until all of the expenditure reports have been submitted by all member agencies. So the primary contact only needs to certify once for the entire consortia. And this screenshot shows the expenditure report certified at the consortia level. You'll notice that the certify button has now changed to display uncertify quarter 3 report. And you'll also notice that it now states that the status is certified. Again, if the report needs to be adjusted after it has been submitted and certified, the consortia primary contact will need to click on the uncertify button to be able to unsubmit and revise a report. And also, as the consortia lead uncertifies the report, they'll have to also go in and unsubmit the member report that needs to be unsubmitted. The member representative and the consortia primary contact both have access to unsubmit reports, but only the consortia primary contact has the ability to certify and uncertify reports. So I'll see if there are any questions. I know this was kind of a lot of information.
Yeah, there are a few
Okay.
questions, Nicole. I think Ryan and I have been answering them, but we'll just kind of, because we do have a little extra time today, we'll just cover them. So Dolores asked, will we report Q3 with a year to date, but will Q4 only be expenditures of the fourth quarter? And we replied, no, every quarter is year to date. So for Q3, it would be Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3 equals Q3. And then Q4 would be Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3 plus Q4 equals Q4. So it builds on, and it's kind of like when you do the reporting in TOPS Pro, it builds on your already submitted data. And so we're building on already submitted expenditures. I don't know. Nicole, anything to add on that?
No, so I think someone else just mentioned that this was confusing. So we have not pre-populated 1 and 2. What we've done is we've submitted quarter 1 and 2, and we've submitted that as 0 expenditures for everyone. So right now in the system, it shows that for quarter 1 and quarter 2, there were 0 expenditures. For quarter 3, you'll report on your expenditures year to date through the end of quarter 3. Because every quarter you're reporting year to date expenditures, it's not necessary for us to report quarter 1 and 2, because that would just be duplicative, or it would just make you do extra work when quarter 3 is letting us know where you're landing.
Right. And Nicole,
Does that answer the question?
So CNP says there are no narrative required. So I guess we could talk about a little bit about the corrective action if it pops up, and the fact that there is a narrative box, but it's really up to the consortia if they want to use it or not. It's for their purposes. Do you want to explain a little bit on that?
Yeah. So yes. So the only narrative piece that is required is if your expenditures fall below the target. So if you complete your quarter 3 report and it falls below the target of 45%, you'll need to a window will pop up for you to complete an explanation as to why that is. There is also another narrative piece for you to add information regarding the summary of your activities in this last quarter. That piece is not required. We're leaving that up to the consortia lead to determine if they want that completed and to work with their members to get that information. But we do have it built to have the ability to fill out that box. If your expenditures fall below the target rate, that does trigger corrective action, and that will be handled through our AEBG TAP.
Right.
I don't know, Neil, if you wanted to add anything about the corrective action.
No, what we'll do, because this is just starting out, we're gonna kind of deal with this on a case by case basis, because there might be some good reasoning why they couldn't make that. And we want to give everybody a chance to kind of get the feel of NOVA, get used to the expenditure reporting, get used to the targets. And so we'll be kind of examining the responses, and then probably convening or getting back together to look at how we're going to handle this in the 18-19 year. So don't expect us to be lowering the hammer very hard on you if you're filling that corrective action box out for this first quarter 3 reporting period. We have to get an understanding of this just like you do. So, and we know that this kind of came up in the last few months or so, and this is kind of new to some people with carryover, if they're bringing in 16-17 carryover. And so we'll be working with the consortia on this one and taking it on a case-by-case basis. There was a question from, let's see, there were a lot of questions here, but let's see. So Sharon Turner asked, for quarter 3, can we input year to date? Yes. will it automatically populate? So, Nicole, is there any automatic population of numbers in here, or do they have to put it in individually?
So the way Nova works is you'll need to enter your expenditures for Q3. Once you've entered your expenditure report and submitted your Q3 report, when you go to Q4 will automatically populate what you've already reported for Q3. So for Q4, if you have additional expenditures, you'll want to add it to that line item. If you don't have any additional expenditures in that object code, you could just leave that as is. So that's the only auto-populate function we have from quarter to quarter.
Right. And Nicole, so Inland Consortium is a little confused. They said if AEBG office has pre-populated Q1 and Q2, does the Q3 entry only include money spent in that quarter? And so to answer that question, Q1 and Q2 have been certified by the AEBG office, but there's no expenses there. So it allows you to go into Q3 and enter your year-to-date expenses, but it doesn't mean that you just enter Q3 expenses, because this is every quarter is year-to-date. Nicole, anything else to add on that?
No, just that's correct. Yes. In order to allow us to jump to Q3 reporting, we had to auto submit. We didn't pre-populate Q1 and 2. We auto submitted it to allow you to be able to jump to Q3.
Okay, and then
also I want to mention.
Oh, go ahead.
Cherish had a comment about submission for 0 will not affect us in the future. Yes, that's correct. This was because we are building a new system. This was just the way we handled Q1 and Q2. Those $0 will not impact you.
Okay, and then Solana was wondering, it'd be nice to get a grid showing what abilities each member primary contact has to share with members, as this is a new system. Doesn't that show up in the consortia listing of who has the various access to the system, Nicole?
I think what they might be referring to is what the user abilities are for each role, which we are working on that. Right now, the consortia primary contact is the only user role that has the ability to certify, and at the member level, the member representative is the only user that has the ability to submit. We are currently working on building out our user roles. We're working on an admin council to further develop that out. And so thank you for that feedback. And we will be working on that to better explain who has access to what. And I don't know, Ryan, if you wanted to add anything on that.
I think you described it pretty well. The permissions currently in NOVA are based on your contact type. So whether that's at the member or the consortium level, in short, for a member contacts can perform the edits. The member representative is the person that can submit that expenditure report. And at the consortium level, the primary contact is the one that certifies all member expenditures, closes out the reporting.
Okay, and just a few more questions. So Cherish says, so the box that pops up if target percentage is not met is the corrective action plan. That's correct. Jody suggests that the dates for each quarter button begin with 7/1. I guess so people know it's year to date. So instead of having the quarterly dates, you have like 7/1 to September 30th, and then Q2 you have 7/1 to, I think it's December 31st, and then third quarter is 7/1 to March 31st. I don't know if we can make that change or not, but that's a good suggestion. So because it's year-to-date reporting, I think it would be important to have that July 1st date listed. So we'll see if we can make that change. Nicole Tracy asks, does consortia need to contact consortia lead to uncertify their budget plan for a budget change?
Yes, the member agency, if the member agency needs to complete a budget revision, you'll need to connect with your consortia lead or primary contact for them to uncertify your budget so that you'll be able to make your revisions. And once your revisions are made, the consortia primary contact will need to recertify your budget so that you'll be able to report on your expenditures.
So just to jump down, so JC says, I'm live on Nova, tried to uncertify the budget to make changes, but cannot. Anybody else having these problems? So JC would have to be how would they uncertify their budget?
So only the consortia primary contact has the ability to uncertify budgets. If you are a consortia primary contact and you do not see this function, please contact us. It might be a browser issue, or you might want to check your profile to make sure you're associated with AEBG and the right consortia. If you've done those things and you're still not seeing that, please contact us. If you're not the primary contact, you'll want to work with your primary contact. If you need that access, you'll want to work with your primary contact to get you that access. Those are the things I can think of right now off the top of my head.
Okay, and then Tracy confirms consortium lead needs to uncertify the budget plan, and the consortium member enters the new budget on Nova. Is that accurate?
Yes, the consortia primary contact uncertifies the budget. The member contact or revises the budget. Only the member representative would have the ability to resubmit the budget, and then the consortia primary contact will need to recertify the budget.
Okay, and then we've got a couple of questions on carryover. I'm going to try to answer that, but I'll allow you to fix anything that I make a mistake on, Nicole. So Sharon asks, how will the system track carryover since the fourth quarter target is 60%? So the way carryover is tracked, when you did your budgets back in December, you had the carryover coming in from the old system, the July 16-17 MIS report. So that remaining balance became your carryover in the new system. Then you did a 17-18, you got your 17-18 funds. So we combined the carryover from 16-17 with your 17-18 funding, and that was your budget that your members submitted by the end of December, or sometime in December. The work plans and budgets were submitted, and that shows carryover from 16-17 from the old system and the new funding for 17-18. So together, that budget, you only have one budget, it shows carryover and it shows new funding, is what we're basing the spending targets on. So when we say 45% at Q3 or 60% at Q4, that is whatever carryover you brought in plus the new funding you got for 17-18. And so for next year, some people might have, if they do a corrective action plan and we say, okay, that sounds all right, they might have 16-17 carryover, 17-18 carryover, and 18-19 new funding, and you will have to spend 15% of all that money by the beginning, at the end of the first quarter, 30% by the end of the second quarter, 45% by the end of the third quarter, and so on. So I hope that, so Sharon, your fourth quarter target 60% would be your 16-17 carryover plus your 17-18 funding. Let's see. And Ashley said, is there a separate report needed for carryover spending, or is everything combined? So Ashley, everything is combined in that one budget. So you have multiple years of funding, but one work plan and one budget, one expenditure report for each 12-month calendar or fiscal year reporting cycle. Let's see. Is there an expenditure target for Q3? That would be the 45%. Yes. And Paige asks, cumulative, yes, we made a nice spreadsheet. Okay. So that's working Did you call one a certifier? I think, Nicole, we're working on trying to get a better way to identify the roles and responsibilities, and that's part of that effort you mentioned, correct?
Yes, that's part of the admin council. Right now, only the primary contact is the role that has the ability to certify. I want to mention we do have a user role in there titled certifying officer. That user role does not have the ability to certify at this point in time. This is something that we're working on further developing and fleshing out as far as the different types of user roles and to better line them up with their title. So if you're an individual that needs to be able to certify, then your access level should be primary contact.
Okay, and then Dolores, I'm a little confused by her statement. I don't know if it's a question. She says the amounts entered for Q4 will be to modify the auto-populated expenses for year-to-date Q3 by adding expenses incurred in Q4. So we're not auto-populating any expenses. We're just kind of not allowing you to put anything in Q1 or Q2, and the system will allow you to put year-to-date for Q3, and then the system will allow you to put a year-to-date for Q4. So there's no auto-populating. You have to put those numbers in. So Q3 would be your expenses from July 1st, 2017 to March 31st, 2018. That's based on that carryover plus new funding budget that you submitted at the end of December. And then Q4 would be July 1st expenditures all the way to June 30th. So Nicole, anything to add, or did I miss something there?
Just one thing to add. So I think so. There's two different things going on for quarter one and quarter two. Nothing has been auto populated. We've just auto submitted, and we've auto submitted everybody at 0 expenditures to be able to jump you to quarter three. But moving forward, once you've submitted quarter three and you've submitted and certified and that's all closed up, when you go to quarter four will auto-populate with what you already reported in quarter three. That's kind of your baseline of where you are in that object code, but it will be editable. It'll just auto-populate for you as what you reported in the last quarter. It is editable, and you'll need to edit that. You'll need to look at those numbers. If there were no additional expenditures in that object code, you would leave it alone. But if you did have additional expenditures, then you would need to edit that number to reflect any expenditures that occurred in that object code.
Okay, and just a few more questions. These are all good questions. We appreciate all the chat questions because it helps us explain the system, understand where there's some confusion, and where we need to do more clarification. So Mariette asks, just for clarification, member representatives cannot uncertify the budget, right? So Nicole, that would be correct. Only the primary contact can uncertify the budget. Is that correct? One more time?
Yes, that's correct. Only the primary contact at the consortia level can uncertify.
Okay, and then I'm going to get to the indirect because that's important. But Cherish and Dustin asked questions about the targets. So Cherish asks, how did percentage targets get determined? Those are the target expenditures that were in the old system. And so that started back in 2015-16. And so those were always the targets in the MIS system. So we just brought those over to the NOVA system. And then Dustin says, are there NOVA targets for 17-18 or just 18-19? So the targets are for the 17-18 Q3, Q4 expense reporting, because we're starting right now, today, this afternoon, with the Q3 expenditure reporting. And those expenditures are based on 16-17 carryover and 17-18 new funding. For 18-19, we'll have 4 quarters with spending targets, 15% at Q1, 30% at Q2, 45% Q3, and 60% at Q4 based on any 16-17 or 17-18 carryover and 18-19 new funding all combined for one budget and one expenditure report for July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. So, let's get back to the indirect, and Nicole, maybe you can help me out. So when the programmers put in the indirect programming, they knew there was the trailer bill out there of restricting the indirect rate. So they put the programming in there for 18-19. So what you'll see when you're doing Q3 and Q4 expenditure, you'll see some red stuff that pops up, anything over 5%. But for the 17-18 Q3 and Q4, we're using the old indirect regulations, which are, if you're a K-12 or county office, you use the CDE approved rate, which could be anywhere from 1% up to 12% or whatever, and then the colleges use the negotiated rate. Starting July 1, and that would be for Q1 for next fiscal year, you will use the CDE approved rate or 5%, which is ever the lesser, and that's for K-12 and county offices. And then colleges would use the negotiated rate or 5%, whichever is the lesser. Nicole, anything to add on that?
No, I think you pretty much hit all the points. We just developed that feature a little early, so so my apologies for any confusion.
Okay, and I think that gets us caught up on the questions. Yes, I think we're good. So is that your last slide, Nicole, for the expense reporting?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about targets. We have talked about targets, and maybe we should just talk about target. No, just kidding. So we've kind of gone over this quite a bit. So it covers, for this year, it covers the 16-17 carryover and 17-18 funds. And then starting next year, it could cover 2 years of carryover and the 18-19 new funding. We talked about the quarters. It takes place every year from now on. And then we do the corrective action plan. And like we said, we're going to look at these as they come in for Q3 and Q4, and then decide how we're going to kind of implement a strategy for next year, providing technical assistance and things like that. We do have a forecasting tool that Nicole kind of highlighted, but we're going to do kind of a separate webinar on that. So give us some time to kind of get used to the forecasting tool. It will be a good tool to use for your spending targets, but we want to have a separate webinar on that and walk you through it. Let's see, I think there's, any other questions on the targets before I move on to the end of the year? Cherish asks, it is recommended that we should only carry over 2 years, right, if money should be spent in a 2-year cycle. Yes, I mean, that's the goal. You can always file a corrective action plan and get the approval to get an extra 6 months on your carryover. So at the end of Q4, if you still have some carryover from 16-17, we can give you an extra 6 months to liquidate that, but you don't want to make a habit of that. We want to get everybody into that 2-year cycle of spending because it shows the legislature that we need more money. And so, but we can work with you. This is the first time we're doing this. So if you do have that 16-17 carryover and you make the case, we'll work with you because those funds actually expire at the end of December 31st, 2018. So, good point. What is the percentage variance needed to submit a budget revision? And Nicole, I think all budget revisions would have to go through the same process. Is that correct? I know we said 15% or something like that, but when we did the programming, what really happened on that one?
Yeah. So unfortunately, NOVA wasn't built. Previously, we did say that members that needed to revise budgets, if your revision amount was less than 15% of your total remaining budget, that you would be able to revise your budgets without any consortia level approval or having to get them involved. But unfortunately, NOVA was not built in that way. That's something that we have put on our list for future work. It was just a little bit more time intensive once we started digging into being able to build that. So that's something that we'll have built for the future. So in the meantime, the way it works is that budget revisions at any percentage amount will need you to work with your consortia primary contact to uncertify your budget so that you can then revise it, and then you'll need to recertify the budget to kind of close that loop.
Right. Thank you. Okay, just really briefly, I'm going to talk about the Q4 or end of the year financial report. Just a reminder, we're still working on this, but it will be due for members by September 1st, and then will be certified by the consortia by the end of September. The main thing I want to stress is we're going to be asking the members for that Q4 reporting end of the year to tell us other fund sources that they've leveraged in the 7 program areas. So if you are using non-credit apportionment, if you are using CalWORKs, if you are using WIOA 2, if you are using LCFF, JLED funds, Perkins, WIOA Title 1, you name it, any other leverage funds. Any other leverage funds we want to know about, and I'm working with a group to design that process in NOVA. We do have some things in NOVA, but we want to make it clear so the guidance will be simple and easy to. I don't know why the screen keeps. Okay, I promise I won't touch it. So, and then we'll do the same thing for fees. So if you are charging fees for AEBG programs, we want to know about that. I don't know why this screen keeps moving around like that. Okay, I'll just keep talking. So just be prepared for that. It'll also have your final expenditures for the 12-month fiscal year process that we talked about. We'll be able to calculate if you're going to have any carryover funds, whether it's 16-17 or 17-18, into the 18-19 year, and then at the end of September, your members will have to do a budget for that. We'll also have any additional corrective action plans, and let's see if we have any questions about that. So how should we submit expenditures for prior year carryover? Is that on a separate line in the expenditure reporting template? So no. So when you did a budget back in December, it was a combined carryover and new funding budget. So when you report your expenditures, it's a combined carryover expenditures and new funded expenditures. So the way we liquidate the carryover, it's first in, first out. So when you report expenditures, we're going to liquidate all carryover funding that's still showing in your budget, and then we'll move on to, so let's say you have a bunch of 16-17, that will get liquidated first, and then when that's expended, we'll go to the 17-18 funding, and then when that gets expended, then we start working on the new funding. So it's a first in, first out, and the system will allow you to do that. So Christy says, please confirm the other funding source you mentioned. Will we have to report them in NOVA starting next year? And the same with student fees. So Christy, we're going to attempt to get that information at the end of this year. So by September 1st, you will be reporting on what other funds you use to serve students. So if you didn't use CalWORKs, you don't have to report on CalWORKs. But if you use WIOA 2 to serve adult students in ASC, ABE, or ESL, we're going to ask you to report that into NOVA by program area. And then same thing for fees. If you charge fees for any of the AEBG program areas, we're going to ask you to report, how much you charged or collected in fees. So that will be due on September 1st. We'll probably have that information in place and guidance out probably next month sometime to give you a couple of months in advance to work with your accounting staff. So Katie asks, will fees charged during 17 be reported on Q4? Well, it won't be reported it'll be reported on a separate sheet. And I don't know, Nicole, if you want to go back to that slide, you can kind of show them where the fees and the leverage funds get report. It's not in the object code expenditures. It's in a different section, and we're still working on that.
Yeah, so I don't have that slide because that's in Q4. That's in a Q4 reporting template, which we haven't quite yet developed just yet. So I don't have any screenshot to show of that just yet, but we are working on it and still developing it.
Okay, and then Todd asks, other leverage funds is something that current WIOA report requires in the future. It'd be nice if this effort could be simplified or potentially combined. The only problem is, Todd, the WIOA 2 asks for ASC, ABE, ESL. We want CTE, which is not part of WIOA 2. And in some cases, adults with disabilities might not be part of WIOA 2, and K-12 success might not be part of WIOA 2. So WIOA 2 is just a subset of AEBG. We have a lot more program areas. So we will continue to work with it. Plus, the allocations are already designated for WIOA 2. So when you get your grant, you know how much you're getting of ASC, how much you're getting of ESL, et cetera, et cetera. With AEBG, we give you a lump sum, and then you decide how you're spending it in the program areas. So we're going to ask for that information back, but it won't be part of your expense reporting. It'll be a separate report. So JC says, very informative to report accurately in NOVA. Great webinar. Oh, thanks, Nicole, Veronica. Great. All right. And then Chair says, in 7,000 object code not to be used in the member expenditure reporting. Nicole, I think we have a object code 7,000, don't we, in the expenditure report?
Yes, we do have an object code 7,000 in the expenditure report.
So it depends on, Cherish, it depends on your district, how they use 7,000. I've seen districts restricted to certain things. I've seen other districts use it for other purposes. So it really depends on your accounting people and how they've set that up and what they use that object code for. And that could vary between colleges and K-12, and that could vary between K-12 districts. So I would check with your accounting staff. So a little feedback there from Francisca and Chrissy. Let's move along. I think we just only have a couple more slides. So planning, I just want to cover a little planning because that'll be in NOVA. So annual plans will be submitted August 15th. They'll be based on your current 3-year plan that was extended to June 30th, 2019. It'll be the same as last year's annual plan. We'll have an executive summary and then strategies by objective and a fiscal section. It'll be streamlined. You can use last year's strategies. We won't be able to bring them forward because some people want to edit that, but you don't have to do the review on last year's strategies. So that cuts down on the amount of work that you have to do. It'll be submitted by the lead, and then members have to approve it. And this annual plan that's due August 15th will drive your work plans by members, and the member budget, which is part of the CFAD process. Those will be due by the end of September 30th, and then the consortia will approve those by the end of October. So that's kind of in a nutshell that annual plan process. We'll probably we're working on releasing some guidance in the next few weeks, and we'll probably open up NOVA for annual plan submission probably in the next couple weeks. Is that an accurate statement, Nicole?
Yes, from what I understand, yes. I think we do have some features already live in the system. However, we're still working on it. So, I mean, you're welcome to kind of click around and look at it. I wouldn't yet start entering any information.
Okay. And then I think that's about it. Well, the 3-year plans aren't due until next year, the updated ones. and we're working with the field teams to provide some guidance on that. So stay tuned. Probably have something out in August, hopefully before schools start back for next year. We'll have that planning guidance out. And yep, here we go. Annual plans will be open in Nova by the end of the month, we think, if not sooner. And tips from Nicole. So if anybody was thinking of getting off, hang in there because Nicole's going to give you some valuable tips she's picked up. And
Okay.
Nicole is definitely the Lucy character, and everybody else is the Charlie Brown. So just
I wouldn't say that. Just be really
right, so
quick.
Nicole,
Okay.
go ahead.
So as I mentioned before, for reporting your expenditure reports, your budgets must be in certified status before the expenditure report can be submitted. Member contacts can enter and edit expenditure report information, but only the member representative can submit the report. And also, the consortia primary contact is the only user role that can certify expenditure reports or that can uncertify any budgets. And as we discussed in length, expenditures are reported as year to date. So as a result, Q1 and Q2 have been auto-submitted. Also, I want to just quickly go over a couple of things. If you've forgotten your password, when you go to the login page, there's a link that says forgot my password, so that should reset your password for you if you're having problems logging in. If you are the appropriate user role and you should have access to certain buttons, but you don't, I would definitely check a few things. I would check to see what browser you're using. We do have experienced problems with Internet Explorer or Safari. The Chrome browser is the most compatible browser with the Nova system, so I would try to use the Chrome browser. And also, you're going to want to check your profile settings. Once you log in, at the top right side of the screen, if you hover over your name, there should be a link for you to click on profile settings. You'll want to click in there and make sure that you are associated with AEBG and that the correct consortia is listed in the drop-down list. Those are kind of the top issues that I've seen come through. I also did want to mention that as questions come in and I've gotten feedback from all of you as you've been working in the system, we really appreciate that. We appreciate the questions. We appreciate the feedback. We appreciate the comments. We want this system to be something that's useful, and we want there to be good data in there, and we want it to work well for everyone. So we do need to hear from you as far as how all of that is working. So thank you.
Yeah, great job, Nicole. We'll probably have kind of like a users group or a focus group after we get through Q3 and Q4. We'll see, going into next year if there's any minor tweaks or clarifications that we need to make. So we'll continue to open the dialogue and keep the discussion going so we make this system work for you. There were just a couple of questions. So Cherish says next 3-year plan will start in May. So the current 3-year plan has been extended in the trailer bill language to June 30th, 2019. The new 3-year plan will start July 1, 2019. So you should start thinking about updating your 3-year plan for next year beginning July 1, 2019 if you haven't already. It does take a while to go through that whole planning process, and you can use the information, the data, and other things that you used in the last 3-year planning process because some of the information probably hasn't changed. So you're really just updating this and then providing maybe some new strategies that you learned in the last 3 years or new practices and things like that. So we'll have guidance coming out on that soon. And then Mariette says, "Are you referring to a 3-year budget plan?" No, it's a program plan. So in legislation, we're required to do a plan to show how we did, kind of evaluating what we did, assessing how we're doing, and then develop an action plan of where we're going for the next 3 years. So that's the planning cycle, which which drives the budget and the expense reporting. And then we also have the student data reporting, which will also be becoming part of this cycle as well. And then Estella says, just to clarify, we will no longer need to separate our budgets by program areas or objectives. Right. So the only thing, we're getting requests by another state agency that when we show the leverage funds and the fees on that separate request in Q4, they want it broken out by program area. So we'll see how that works. I'm going to talk to that focus group about that. But for general expenditure reporting, you will not need to report it by program area or by objective. But there is a request by CDE to try to get some basic funding information by program for the maintenance of effort for WIOA 2. So we'll continue to look at that. I know that's problematic to do it by program area because it's not an easy fit to say re-entry into the workforce. How is that different than pre-apprenticeship? How is that different than short-term vocational versus K-12 success? So there's a lot of kind of gray area between some of the program areas. So we'll continue to look at that and keep you abreast of the situation. And that's why we're using these focus groups with the field to kind of figure out where some third rail issues or stuff that we don't really do a good job at collecting or are impossible because our accounting structure isn't set up like that. So Chrissy says, will there be a new template for 2019, the next 3-year plan? So they're working on it, Chrissy. It'll be in Nova. I don't know what it'll look like because they haven't developed kind of the guidance yet. But you can see from the legislation, we do have to cover certain areas. But I think the template and the requirements will look a little different than what you're seeing in the legislation. It'll probably be simplified, I hope. And so more to follow on that. Okay, so we have 2 minutes. And I'm going to see if anybody has some last minute pressing question, not for me, but for Nicole. We're going to try to stump Nicole. Oh my goodness. Here came the Hail Mary at the last minute. Cypher sent in a huge question. So I don't know, Nicole, I'm going to take a stab at it. And let's see, and maybe we can take this offline, but I want to read through it since we do have a minute and a half. Our consortia has allocated $16-17 to members to address regional gaps. These dollars are recorded under the fiscal agent allocations, not under the member allocations in NOVA. Currently, the members receive those regional project funds reported the unspent dollars as their 16-17 carryover in NOVA. Is that correct, or should 16-17 unspent funds be reported under the fiscal agent carryover? So what I would say about that is if your members agreed to the fiscal agent to hold that, because technically all funds have to be allocated within 45 days and pass through to members. But if the members were in agreement to have the fiscal agent to hold that, when you do your expenditure reporting, the fiscal agent might show that they're not meeting their spending target. So that member, I would assume it's State Center CCD is the fiscal agent, and they are holding the funds. So it might look like they're not hitting their 45% or their 60%. So what I would do in the corrective action plan is explain that of you're holding dollars, and then maybe at your next consortium meeting, you might want to talk about that. Is this the best way to go? And so you see what the plus sides or downsides are to that. But we will work with you. You will have to probably do a corrective action plan if you are holding that much money and it's not being spent. So we'd probably have to get more information of how that's going to be liquidated. And then I would look at the options or the alternatives to say, would it be better if the members had this so they're more responsible, or is everybody okay with the fiscal agent holding it? And then, so just to further answer the question, also, how does members report expenditures on those funds that's spent not shown? So it would be up to the fiscal agent member to report those expenditures since you didn't allocate them to the member. So that's the risk the fiscal agent takes by holding on to that fund. Are they responsible for those funds and responsible for reporting the expenditures unless you do an allocation amendment to show you've moved funding from the fiscal agent to the member? So you might want to look at that. There are some pluses and minuses. And so right now, the fiscal agent would have to report all those funds that they hold on to unless it's in the member account. And okay, so we'll follow up with you, Cypher. And we're at time here. Nicole, any last comments to make? And appreciate everybody hanging in there.
Just want to thank everybody for being on the webinar today, and thank you for all of your questions and comments that you share with me. We appreciate that, and we use that as we further develop the system.
Okay, and Veronica, can you send us a copy of the chat? Because there were a couple of questions, especially Cypher's question, that we didn't get to all of that, and I think Todd had, and a couple other people had some follow-up questions. So if you could send that to us. And then Veronica, any closing instructions for everybody?
Yes, thank you, Neil, and I will definitely send you the chat transcript. And to all of the participants, thank you all so much for participating in today's webinar. On next Wednesday, May 23rd, we will have a professional development webinar regarding social media. So if you're looking for ways to effectively use social media to promote your adult education program, that will be the platform to learn more about that. I'm going to close the meeting, and when I do so, the evaluation will appear on your screen. Please be sure to fill out this evaluation. It's a way for us to get feedback to Nicole and Neil and Ryan, as well as provide any additional technical assistance or professional development. I also put in the chat that if you have any additional questions for Neil, Nicole, or Ryan regarding NOVA, please submit them to AEBG TAP. That's tap at aebg.org, and we'll be sure to get those answers to you. Thank you all so much for your time, and everyone have a great day and a great weekend.
Veronica, just one last thing. So the people are wondering where the chat is. So when you archive this version, they can go on and see the chat when they access the archived version. And we'll be scheduling another webinar to go over annual plan submission in NOVA and talking about the forecasting tool. And we'll probably schedule that next month. So look for that. We'll post that on the AEBG website and in the newsletter. And thank you, Veronica, for all your assistance today. And Nicole and Ryan, great job. I appreciate all the help. And we look forward to working with everybody in the future on making NOVA the best financial tool possible. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone.